a very good evening and thank you for joining us on Biz24. Now, I want to get right into the topic with you. I'm sure a lot of us watching right now will have this one question that's burning in the back of our minds because we probably just finished our A-levels, we finished our O-levels, now we don't know exactly where to go in this education aspect. And when we think about education, a lot of us might think, okay, national university, but now we know with the current situation in Sri Lanka, it's always good for us to expand our options and look elsewhere. But of course, it's not always convenient. Sometimes we might have to leave the country, the comfort of our own homes. But what if we can have all those qualifications in the comfort of Sri Lanka? And to speak on this, we have a university with us today that is not a new face when it comes to the education sector. It's really a big name, and that is Edith Cowan University. And we're here to talk to Mr. Jake Cowan, who is the Vice President and the Deputy Vice Chancellor of International Programs at Edith Cowan University, and also Mr. David Matthews, who is the General Manager of Edith Cowan University Sri Lanka campus. Now, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us on this program today, both of you, Mr. Garman and Mr. Matthews. Now, I'm sure Edith Cowan University, to a lot of us watching, is not a new name. We've all heard of it when it comes to Australia, of course, specifically, and when it comes to very, very advanced degrees, when it comes to the business side, the science side, whichever side really, we've heard, have you tried ECU? Have you tried Edith Cowan? And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you the newest installment of the ECU branches, and that is happening this August. So it's very timely discussion that we're having. But of course, now we're talking specifically about the expansion of this very relevant campus in Sri Lanka. A lot of us, it's a household name. But I'm sure a lot of us would like to know where this all started. If you could get us to the roots. I think, Mr. Jake, I'd like to start with you when it comes to the history of Edith Cowan. If you could just tell us about the making of this university and also the core aspects and the core values of ECU. If you could start us off.
Thank you. Yes, ECU actually began as a teachers' college at the turn of the 20th century. And our namesake is for Edith Dirksey Cowan, who was the first female member of Parliament in Australia. She actually features on our $50 note. She's that revered and known as a member of the Australian community. We are known really for our equity, our access, and our inclusion. And our courses really are industry-focused, industry-facing, and that's really in our DNA. The ethos of our university is really around that student experience, learning and teaching, and that applies to not just our domestic students, but to our international students. And I think that really runs through to the campus and the ethos of what David's managing here with ECU Sri Lanka.
Of course. Now, I think it's very specific, very important for us, Mr. Matthews, you being the General Manager of the Sri Lanka chapter of ECU. If you could just give us a glimpse into the beginning of ECU in Sri Lanka, if you could just give us a little bit of a peek.
Edith Cowan University started long before I came to Sri Lanka. It's been here for about 23 years. Which I think is why it's so well known in Sri Lanka.
Significant amount.
Working in a project with Navitas and ACBT. And for those 23 years, we actually have a lot of students who studied with us. And we currently have about 2,500 alumni from our programs here. And I guess a number of years ago, the university decided, well, can we go one step further rather than students doing part of their degree and then transferring to Australia and working inside a college, is there an opportunity to actually set up a full campus here in Sri Lanka?
Of course, that is the effort, that's the goal, and it's currently being come into fruition very quickly. As we speak, it's already underway. Now, Mr. Jake, I'd like to direct another question to you regarding the specific reception. Now, we heard about the history and, of course, how it had come to be Edith Cowan University. Now, if you could tell us, how has the reception to ECU changed over the years when it comes to Australia specifically, where it originated, and how is it looking like now?
Look, ECU has been a very early adopter of internationalization. David mentioned Navitas. Their very first ever pathway college was with Edith Cowan University back in the 1990s. When we became a university in the early 1990s, a clear focus of ECU was to expand beyond just its domestic offering and to be a truly leading international university. So we've had a number of programs around the globe. We recruit a substantial number of students who come onshore to study with us, and a lot of how that indexes well is we've had a rating as the top university for public university for student experience for a number of years. I mean, there's 30 to 40 odd universities in Australia, and that we feature as number one is something we're quite proud of in that student experience space. In terms of quality and learning and teaching, we've had a 5-star rating 16 years running. So again, that's something we're quite proud of, and I think that permeates all of the study and the experience, whether that be in coursework programs, research, PhDs and master's programs. That's really in our DNA.
Of course.
And if I could just add on to that.
Of course.
Jake's talking about the teaching learning quality at Edith Cowan University, and that's been an important part of what us setting up here as well. So we've focused from day one about how do we bring exactly what we have in Australia, that quality and what they're known for, how do we bring that to Sri Lanka? So we work with our Dean, Dr. Sajani Dois, and all of our staff here on recruiting staff to teach with us, and all of those staff are the same quality, same qualifications, and they're all also interviewed and signed off by Australia as well. So we make sure that we have the same quality, because wherever we have a campus for Edith Cowan University, whether it's one of the 3 campuses in Australia or in Sri Lanka, we have to give those students that same quality experience.
Of course, and I think that's a very good question for me, a very good point for me to piggyback off of when it comes to specifically Edith Cowan University. Now, we see this a lot in other unnamed affiliate universities that are in Sri Lanka. There's quite the number, but Edith Cowan University is a little bit of a cut above the rest when it comes to specifically the quality of education as compared to the financing aspect. So if there is anything that you could add, of course, Mr. David or Mr. Jake, how do you even manage having such a good ratio of finance to quality of education when we know that the degree or the certificate that we're getting from ECU is definitely, it's almost rubber sealed in Australia itself. That's the quality. So if you could just elaborate on how this process works and how we are ensure this education in Sri Lanka.
Do you mean the balance between student fees?
Exactly.
Okay. So when the university decided to set up in Sri Lanka, we knew we couldn't charge Australian fees, and so we did a lot of research, or the university did a lot of research on what would work in Sri Lanka. And so the fees that we set in Sri Lanka are based on the Sri Lankan market. At the same time, we're obviously operating in Sri Lanka, and so we try and maintain that balance between quality but also making it affordable for Sri Lankan students. It's been going well so far, and I think the main thing is when we look at quality, our teaching staff in Sri Lanka, they join all the meetings that the teaching staff in Australia join with the unit coordinators, so there's no difference between what they're doing than what the teachers in Australia are doing. They're in the same group and in the same meetings, so we make sure that that quality continues. But for us it's paramount. We wouldn't open here unless that quality was the same, otherwise there's no point in us being here.
Exactly.
And what's really exciting about this is it's the first of its kind in Australia. This is the first fully managed Australian campus in Sri Lanka. It's the first fully managed university with such a range of courses and awards and degrees that have that quality and that imprimatur of quality from our home institution in Perth, Australia.
Exactly, and that versatility is very much appreciated in a country like Sri Lanka, especially in this economic and social climate where we can attain these kinds of achievements at the comfort of our own home soil. Now, of course, to further on this specific area, now when it comes to Edith Cowan University, worldwide. Now we know that Sri Lanka, it's a very reputable force when it comes to the education sector. Worldwide, what exactly is ECU regarded as known for?
Oh, look, we really punch above our weight in a number of areas, particularly in the health sciences, nursing, but we do very well with engineering, business programs. We're a comprehensive university. Cybersecurity is a course where we feature quite prominently. But I would say, hand on heart, that all of our programs are really informed by considering the whole life cycle of a student journey. And that really begins from the moment when they are looking where they want to study, right through, not just when they graduate, but when they have those employment outcomes, which are very important to us because very few students, in fact, study for the sake of just studying. It's for a purpose, it's for a goal, and ultimately that is employability and skilling up a workforce. So for us, that's really where we widen our lens to consider all of our courses for our students.
Exactly, and that is exactly why it has done so well in Sri Lanka specifically, because there is a job-focused search for education. There is no need to deny that, because that is necessity. But of course, that does not mean that ECU has in any way prevented for the sake of learning, because now we see that we are currently in a location that will definitely, completely facilitate that thirst for knowledge. Now, I think it's important for us to get to, now that we know the history and we know exactly how ECU has gotten to where it is today, I think a big question that I may have missed out on just a few moments ago is why? Why exactly Sri Lanka? Why did ECU pick Sri Lanka of all countries?
I guess that should be for you, Jake.
Look, again, it goes back to that long-term partnership we had with Navitas, being an early pioneer in that internationalization space. For us, it's also about giving back. It isn't just about how we recruit and students come study with us in Australia, but it's how we give back to such an essential market, a country like Sri Lanka. In fact, when we talk about our outbound students from Australia going abroad, they get funding that's called New Colombo Plan funding.
Oh my goodness.
So there's a lot of deep history there between our two nations, Australia and Sri Lanka. And having a campus here, particularly in Colombo, just makes sense. I mean, Sri Lanka really is at the nexus, is it as a hub in terms of South Asia. ECU are quite well known throughout the South Asia region. So for us, it ticks a lot of boxes for its location, its history, those bilateral relations between our two countries.
Of course, there's a rich history between Australia and Sri Lanka, and ECU is only looking to further that bond. And there's quite a lot for us to discuss when it comes to ECU and the future plans, as well as the current progression in Sri Lanka and worldwide. But before that, let's take a very short commercial break. You're watching Biz 24. Be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Biz 24, and we were in discussion with Edith Cowan University, specifically Mr. Jake Garman and Mr. David Matthews, who is, Mr. Jake Garman is the Vice President and the Deputy Vice Chancellor of International Programs at ECU, and Mr. David Matthews, of course, is working right here, General Manager of Edith Cowan University, Sri Lanka campus. Now, we got a lot of information down about the history and the making of ECU in the past 10 odd minutes. Now, I think we should probably get to the specific aspects of the education. I'm sure a lot of us would be waiting for this piece of information. What courses, Mr. David, do you offer right now at ECU for Sri Lankans? Okay.
Right now, we offer 6 degree programs, so bachelor's degrees. And when I say degrees, I mean from year 1 all the way to completion. So we run the Bachelor of Commerce, and the Bachelor of Commerce has 3 majors in International Business Management, and we're just introducing our new marketing major. And when I talk about the quality of Edith Cowan University, we wanted to bring the marketing major earlier, but they wouldn't let us commence here until we have our digital hub established, which is a room specifically on how we do digital marketing. And we're building that on the ground floor at the moment. So when that comes, that new program will start here in a few weeks' time. The second course is the Bachelor of Computer Science, where students do software engineering or cybersecurity. And we know that computer science is a growing field here, but also internationally. We also have a specific degree on the Bachelor of Cybersecurity. We know the Sri Lankan government has talked about the challenges of cybersecurity in Sri Lanka. It's the same around the world, and we know that banks, companies, even our university employs staff who are focused on protecting our companies from cybercrime. A really exciting one for us is the Bachelor of Biomedical Science. So we're building brand new laboratories here downstairs for our biomedical sciences. So in there, and the really exciting thing about this course is that in the 24 units, 17 of those are currently laboratory focused. So our students aren't sitting in classrooms looking at theory, they're in the laboratories actually working on
practical aspects.
That's right. And for us, that's why the laboratories are such an important key part of this whole campus here. We have the Bachelor of Nursing, which is a one-year top-up program, which those nurses who have diploma qualifications can do a one-year top-up to get a bachelor's degree. And the last one is a really exciting program we do here, is the Bachelor of Design in Games and Interactive Design. So we have students who are learning about developing games, but also interactive design for whole aspects of different company needs. And also in our digital hub, we'll be using that as a gaming centre for our students for learning, but also for enjoyment as well. Next year, we're also introducing our Bachelor of Technology and Engineering. So we have 3 engineering laboratories in this building. And so we'll be starting that, which we know is a really growing program in Australia, which is what Edith Cowan University is known for, but also to introduce that to our Sri Lankan students here as well.
Of course, I mean, just hearing you go off that list of extremely versatile courses that you will be applying, especially when it comes to the games department, which is very much not facilitated, and also the cybersecurity aspect as well. So there is a lot of options for us if there was if we were to join ECU. So I'm sure that there's quite the incentive for all of us watching here today to actually consider, especially because it's right here, it's right in one building, and it really doesn't get easier than this.
And if I could just add in,
yeah,
because we know the challenges in Sri Lanka with O-levels and A-levels at the moment, so we also have having our pathway courses in here, so some foundation diploma courses which lead directly into the university. And that's to help the students who are in Sri Lanka who can't quite get into university yet. We have other options for them to get focused to start heading towards university.
Exactly, that O-level, A-level hassle is not going to completely stunt the future of your education, despite all of the issues that Sri Lankan students are going through right now. There's always a way out, and this is probably the most prominent way that's upcoming right now. And I think it's important for us to understand, now that you specifically mentioned, Mr. David, when it comes to the hassle of O-levels and A-levels. Now, other advantages on top of that, I'm sure a lot of us would like to understand why it would be such an advantage for us to complete such degrees in Sri Lanka itself.
Obviously, the students can go to Australia and do their whole degree there. And there's a number of reasons why students don't want to go to Australia or can't go to Australia. Of course, there is a cost implication, and that's definitely a driver. But also, some families and some students don't want to travel. But what we looked at when we set up the campus here is, we know that there are many students who finish school and there's only limited places at Sri Lankan universities. So can we bring another university here which gives another option to students? So they can do the whole degree with us here, and what we're finding is that students will do their bachelor's degree in Sri Lanka and then they'll go across to Perth to do their master's programs. So then they can do a bit of some study in Sri Lanka and then some in Australia. And of course, because we're the same university in Sri Lanka and Australia, they can do 1 year here or 2 years here and then transfer across to...
There's flexibility.
That's right. That works 2 ways as well, because Australia, the Australian students in Perth can also come back the other way and study here.
Exactly, and I think that's a very important point for us to further on. Mr. Jake, if you could just let us know, I'm pretty sure it's a burning question. Now, we have this behemoth of a university that's being constructed here. There's a wide variety of programs, but is it just Sri Lankan students? Is there any hope, or is there any discussion or talks on the table regarding the international student experience in Sri Lanka due to ECU?
Oh, look, I think I touched on it earlier when I said that Sri Lanka, being where it is in South Asia, is very strategic. David mentioned earlier the number of places available for Sri Lankan students. Well, you can multiply that, I don't know by what fold, but in India, for example, you know, that emerging middle class and the number of students seeking higher education is just almost a limitless number. So I think long term, with the campus and how it matures and how ECU itself goes from strength to strength, I think we will see it operate more in that longer term view that we have for the campus as being a South Asia hub and a destination of study.
Of course,
sure.
there is a very high potential of this happening, and I'm sure a lot of us are very excited to hear that as well, especially because ECU is considered, this is considered an international campus. So I'm sure a lot of us would like to know, now we call it an international campus, we have international schools, there's not much of an international experience apart from the educational curriculum, and well, those are the very basics, the bare bones of the standard of international. So if you could let us know, Mr. David, what does ECU bring to the table when they call it an international campus?
As Jake mentioned, we are building a campus in Sri Lanka, but also we want to attract international students. And my first discussion with the Vice-Chancellor a number of years ago, and also this year, was his idea is he'd love Australian students to spend one semester of their course studying in Sri Lanka. And part of internationalisation of a university is how do we give those opportunities to our students to learn more about the rest of the world? So I know in Australia, for example, they have many nationalities studying there, and it gives all the Australian students and the international students an opportunity to meet people from different countries and learn about different cultures, different practices. We want to do the same thing here in Sri Lanka. So by bringing in international students and also Australian students here, it means that our Sri Lankan students in Sri Lanka can get to experience those discussions, those classroom discussions, but also relationships with students from around the region and hopefully around the world as well. We always talk about the university as such a defining time in our lives, and that's where we make a lot of our lifelong friendships and also potential business relationships as well. So the more we can introduce our students to other people, the more opportunities they have as they leave university.
Of course, university can be considered the first dip of the toe when it comes to the rest of your life, the connections you make. University is, well, of course, it's glorified as a very magical time, but a lot of us, while hoping for that ideal, it falls short of our expectations. So I'm pretty sure a lot of us that are hoping to connect with ECU is really, you know, they're hoping on this being that experience, and so far it's proving to be so gradually, slowly but surely. But now that we're in the venue itself, and this is just a sneak peek of exactly what it looks like, and I'm sure there's much more exciting areas and landscapes to come, and that is a very important aspect of the space for learning, and that I'm sure that ECU being a collaborative work, it should definitely hinge on that specific point. So I think a lot of us would like to know how the whole design process went when it comes to this specific university. I'm sure there's a lot for us to break down on that specific area.
It took a long time.
Exactly.
And lots of discussions. So really the discussions have been between Australia and Sri Lanka continuously from day one about the planning right up even to today about how do we keep improving things. We're very lucky. We work with a well-known Sri Lankan architect, Nilesh De Silva, and he's helped us. He's designed buildings around the world, and also he knows Australia quite well. And so we worked with Nilesh on how do we make this into a really special place. And once the campus opens, one of the focuses has been on, it's not just about the teaching and learning spaces. We want a campus where students can come in to feel comfortable, relax with their friends, they can collaborate. So for example, in the library area, it's not a traditional library where you have to sit there and not speak. It's about how do you have a space to meet with friends and work on projects together. And is that very much during COVID, people are used to being at home. How can we bring a bit of the home into the campus as well? So the design has been really focused on that, but most importantly, it's about, is it the same quality is what's in Perth as what we have here? So for example, the biomedical laboratories, we spend a lot of time in Perth in the laboratories with our project manager going through measuring things, checking all the equipment. Everything is signed off by the head of biomedical sciences. With the engineering labs, the executive dean of engineering went through every detail, make sure the labs here are exactly the same as we have in Australia. So that's been a very important process. So we're trying to get, it's an Australian campus with a Sri Lankan feel.
Exactly. That is very important as well. I'm sure that's probably one of the biggest points that the students, hopeful students, would be looking for when it it comes to their university experience. They bring a little bit of home with them, and of course the university experience remains completely perfect. And now we don't have much time left, but I'm sure this is a burning question. If you could please answer us, why Sri Lanka? Now we know the strategic aspects, we know the long bond, but apart from that, why else did ECU choose to invest in Sri Lanka specifically? Why Australia investing in Sri Lanka in this specific time frame? If you could please elaborate for us.
Sure, I might start there. I think I've covered quite a few of the reasons, but I think what I haven't noted on is the students. In fact, Sri Lankan students are very, very good quality students. For us, it made so much sense to be investing and building a campus here for the educational needs of the country, because all of the students that we have that come to study with us in Perth always achieve well above the metric and the mean that we have for international students. So for us, it's about an investment in a country that already has quality education and how we can enhance that and build on that in the higher education space.
Of course.
And I think we also see Sri Lanka, we know, has been through a hard time, but it's starting to come out of it. We can start feeling some positivity, and we want to contribute to that positivity. So for us, it's about investing in a place where we see opportunity in Sri Lanka. And as Jake said, the students are fantastic. And what's been really nice is over the last couple of months, a lot of the alumni who studied from Sri Lanka, many of them are in Sri Lanka, but a lot of them around the world, in Australia, Canada, Europe. They're all contacting me saying they're so happy to hear that Edith Cowan University is bringing a full campus here. So that, I guess, is not a business thing, but it's also, it makes us feel good that people are happy that we're coming here as well.
And of course, that is a very important point as well, considering how connected the alumni still continue to be, and the push towards bettering the higher education aspect in Sri Lanka and putting faith in the potential